Shambolic at best, cowardly at worst. It is fair to say the coroner was coruscating in his verdict on the police in Tunisia today over the beach attack that killed so many. But are holiday companies telling us the truth about the risks? Critics might say it's to save his knighthood, but Sir Philip Green stumps up a whopping £360 million for the BHS pension fund. First Vauxhall now forward. Job losses may loom at Bridgend in Wales. There's another independence referendum in Scotland, now a question of when, not if. And the Super League, the big money tempting football stars out to China.
This is ITV News with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. If we ever book a foreign beach holiday, most of us might consider taking out some kind of insurance, but not many perhaps think too much about who will be protecting us from harm when we're actually there. But maybe we should, because those who were supposed to have been protecting British holidaymakers in Sousse in Tunisia from harm 2 summers ago were castigated by a coroner today. The response of the police was shambolic at best, cowardly at worst, he said. One officer fainted. A security guard took off his shirt so no one realised what his job was. Many families thought the coroner was not actually hard enough on the holiday company TUI for failing to pass on Foreign Office warnings about the threat of terrorism. So they are taking TUI to court.
In the view of Her Majesty's coroner, the relatives of the people who were killed in the Sousse attack have shown a quiet dignity of which their loved ones would have been proud. At the end of this inquest, they showed some more, standing behind their solicitor, making it clear that their legal fight is not finished yet.
We will now be preparing to commence civil proceedings against TUI. The inquests were about those who tragically lost their lives. They must never be forgotten, and their families hope that no one else will ever have to suffer the same fate in the future.
The massacre at the Imperial Marhaba Hotel was the biggest loss of British life in a terror attack since 7/7. It was near the start of the holiday season in Sousse. And that morning, camera phones, which should have recorded smiling faces, instead captured the spread of fear and panic. There's a gunman on the beach. He's shooting people at point-blank range, and he's heading towards the hotel grounds. That man was an Islamist extremist, Saifuddin Rezgui. He carried on shooting for over 20 minutes and killed 38 people.
I said to John, Johnny's there, he's got a gun. And then the next thing, the gunman had gone by me. I turned round and John was on the floor.
Cheryl Stollery's husband, John, was killed as they tried to escape through the hotel car park.
We had plans for our life together, to grow old together, and he's not there now. And we miss him terribly.
And if you'd known about the level of the terror threat, would you have booked the holiday?
If I had been shown the specific terror advice that related to Tunisia, then yes, we'd have gone on holiday, but we wouldn't have been going to Tunisia.
The coroner said he couldn't reach a conclusion of neglect on the part of the tour operator, but he did criticise TUI for not alerting customers to Foreign Office advice about the high level of terror threat. His most scathing criticism was saved for the Tunisian police, whose response to the shooting was too slow. Their approach, he said, was at best shambolic and at worst cowardly. The last moments of this inquest were among its most powerful. One by one, the coroner read out the names of the dead and the nature of their injuries. It was a carefully delivered reminder of the terrible violence inflicted upon an innocent group of people and the gunshot wounds they received as they ran or pleaded for their lives. On that day in Sousse, said a statement from the tour operator, the world changed. TUI also says it's taken steps to raise awareness of Foreign Office travel advice. But relatives of the dead don't think they did enough. So while they grieve, they will also sue. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
It hardly needs saying, perhaps, but the particular tragedy of what happened in Sousse is that many of those who lost their lives were having the time of their lives on a longed-for holiday. And behind that statistic of 30 British dead, there were, of course, individual, vibrant lives brought to a violent and premature end. There were couples who'd spent most of their lives together and young students who still had most of their lives to lead. There were mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, all soaking up the sun in what should have been a seaside paradise. It was the most terrible of all equations. One terrorist, more than 30 victims. Tony and Christine Callahan somehow survived. The evening before the attack, they'd been enjoying their Tunisian break. By the following night, they were in hospital, both with gunshot wounds.
It's a miracle I'm here, really. Had that bullet gone a little bit higher to my chest area, I won't be here talking to you now. I'm so lucky to be alive, really.
They now raise money for the hospital that treated them, but the failures of the Tunisian police, exposed in this inquest, haunt them still.
There were armed police officers, and I just think, so many lives could have been saved. That gunman had 45 minutes to do exactly what he wanted. That particular day, he ruled everybody.
For those caught up in it, the horrific memories of what unfolded on this beach are unlikely ever to fade. But over 16 days of evidence, the impact on the families thousands of miles away at the time was clear enough too. Raymond and Angela Fisher had been together since they were 15. Their first grandchild was born this year. Their daughter Donna told the inquest they'd begun making plans for their 50th wedding anniversary. These celebrations were never to be. The one comfort we can take is that our parents left this world together. Joel Richards on the right here was on holiday with his grandfather Charles and uncle Adrian. Joel's younger brother Owen on the left was there too, and the only one to survive. How can 4 people go on holiday and only one come back? Their mother Suzanne said. That fateful, horrific morning destroyed my family. Ross and Brad Naylor lost their father Scott. He was killed as he sunbathed on the beach with his new partner Sue Davey.
It's pointless. There's no good that can come from it. And if anyone could ever come to me and sort of say an answer towards that, then I'd be super, super shocked, because there just isn't. It just wrecks people's lives. That's all it does.
30 British lives were taken that day, and the pictures tell so many different stories of the love and hope and happiness that was snatched away. And for what? Well, on that subject, the gunman in the Sousse attacks, Sefeddine Rezgoui, was previously unknown to the security services despite his links to Islamist groups. He's not thought to have travelled to Syria to fight, but it is becoming clear that plenty of other potential terrorists are now returning from there to Tunisia. Well, our security editor, Rohit Kachru, is in Sousse tonight. Rohit, pretty clear and rather uncompromising findings from the coroner today. What's been the reaction in Tunisia tonight?
Well, Tom, no official reaction at all, but we have managed tonight to speak to a judicial source within the national investigation here in Tunisia into precisely what happened on the beachfront here. And he says that investigators accept the findings of these inquests, but they're clear. They believe that some of the evidence that was given to this inquest has been exaggerated, that some of the testimony that led to these scathing conclusions about security failures and failures in the medical response have been talked up. Nevertheless, they say that they have learned some of the lessons. They have increased security. They've increased training. They say they've caught up with the tactics of the terrorist groups that they were so failing on 2 years ago. However, in that space of time, those tactics have moved on, and it's really not clear whether the Tunisian authorities have adapted their responses as yet suitably.
OK, Rohit, thank you very much indeed. Well, what is clear from the coroner's findings is that Foreign Office information about the potential threat level in Sousse was not passed on to holidaymakers. In the run-up to the Sousse attack, the Foreign Office advised against travel to the high-risk southern and border regions, importantly not including the beach resorts shown in green. But it did mention a high threat from terrorism, including kidnapping. There was also additional advice to stay vigilant and away from large crowds following the recent attack on the Bardo Museum in the capital, Tunis. But the inquest heard that the website of travel agent TUI contained no reference at all to that attack or prominent warnings of the ongoing threat. And an ITV News investigation has found that even very recently, some holiday companies were still not passing on relevant advice.
Every year, British tourists take around 42 million holiday trips overseas, and our journeys can take us close to terror risk. But how much can we expect the travel trade to alert us? We start our investigation with Nairobi, capital of Kenya. The Foreign Office travel advice website says there's a heightened threat of terrorist attacks. We visited Virgin Holidays.
What about Nairobi? Is that kind of safe to roam around and explore?
It's Nairobi, isn't it? It's Kenya. I can't give you that. I can't say to you, you're going to be fine.
In 2013, 67 died in Nairobi. Details are on the Foreign Office travel advice website. Security information is also on Virgin's site, but in a 26-minute conversation, the travel agent didn't mention it, even when asked this direct question.
Any extra sites we need to go to for advice?
This has some advisory notes.
But the notes don't mention security. They will in future. As a result of our investigation, Virgin Holidays, which already prompts people to check advice at the time of booking, now says that will happen earlier. Next, we inquired about Yala, an area of South Thailand. The Foreign Office advised against all but essential travel to the province. We visited STA Travel.
Is there any areas that we should avoid, do you think?
Not that I'm aware of.
But we'd be safe to roam around Thailand?
Yeah, I think so. Haven't heard anything bad at all, so no, I'd be very comfortable with sending you on this kind of trip.
STA told us it will now repeat training for all 300 of its travel staff. It has advice on its website with a link to Foreign Office information, which it also highlights in travel itineraries given before payment. Our next inquiry concerns Istanbul in Turkey. The Foreign Office site says there's a high threat from terrorism. An attack in January killed 39. We visited Thomas Cook.
You could always check your passport.
This agent did highlight the Foreign Office advice site.
So nothing to worry about in any of these sorts of areas?
Not at the moment, no.
He referred to a brochure, but like most firms, it doesn't mention terror advice. Pleased that its agent did point out the Foreign Office advice, Thomas Cook agreed to an interview. It says information is on its own site, and they'll now add that to brochures.
No, that's right. We don't refer to it at the moment. It's something that we're reviewing, and I'm sure will change. It is a real industry issue. It's a hot topic at the moment. We're listening to our customers, we're listening to our colleagues in store, and we have still got room for improvement, but we have come a long way.
The industry's code says customers should be made aware that Foreign Office advice is available before booking. The onus is on travellers themselves to check their holiday dreams against the nightmare of terror warnings. Chris Choi, ITV News.
As Chris mentioned, Tunisia is not alone in having a high threat of terrorism. As we also saw, Turkey has a Foreign Office warning against it, and so too does Egypt. Then there are those countries closer to home, such as France and Germany, that have seen recent terrorist attacks. Other popular holiday destinations that have a general threat include Spain, Greece, Italy and the Netherlands. There are more details on our website if you want to take a look, itv.com/news. Now, what price would you put on a knighthood? Well, Sir Philip Green's critics might feel they have his answer tonight, around £363 million to be precise, but maybe that's a bit cynical. It's a lot of money and there is no evidence he was legally bound to pay it. You may recall that back in June, Sir Philip Green promised MPs he would sort, in his words, the pension crisis at BHS, the store chain he sold to a two-time bankrupt for £1. Today, he came good on that promise. He's agreed to pay the £363 million into the BHS fund. BHS pensioners will still be worse off than they should have been, but better off than they would have been if the pension scheme had collapsed too.
He promised he'd sort the BHS pension problem, and 8 months on he has done, although it's cost Sir Philip Green £363 million. Most of this money he'll never see again. It's a large sum, but less than the regulator initially demanded. The chief executive insists it's a good deal.
We have a robust settlement here, which, as I've said, is right in both terms of money and structure.
You held his feet to the fire, did you?
Well, we have negotiated robustly.
Did you settle for less because you took the view that the legal case against Sir Philip was actually quite weak?
No, we believe we had a strong case and we would have pursued it if necessary. But in the end, we are faced with a situation where there's an offer on the table. You negotiate around that, you try and get the offer to be as good as it can be, and then you have to make a choice.
The BHS pension schemes have 19,000 members. The pensions regulator expects almost half of them to choose to walk away with cash lump sums. The rest will end up in a new standalone pension scheme. They'll receive the same starting pension as they were originally promised by BHS. The threat of a 10% reduction for those yet to retire has gone, but future income will be less generous than the original scheme.
I think most of the 20,000 pension scheme members will be there or thereabouts. They'll be worse off than they were expecting, but slightly better off than if they'd gone into the Pension Protection Fund.
BHS finally closed its doors last summer. It's taken a long time for Sir Philip to agree this settlement. Michael Williams has a BHS pension. He worked for the retailer for more than 30 years, and he's pleased that at least now he has some certainty.
I retired expecting a full pension, I guess. Now, the fact of the matter is now I'm not going to get that. My wife's not going to get what she expected when I depart from this world. And the inflation increases won't be as generous. So, yeah, I'm a bit upset that I've not got what I paid for. But at the end of the day, as I said earlier, it's a compromise.
It was never my intention for the business to have the ending it did.
Sir Philip Green apologised to staff and pensioners in an interview with ITV News 3 months ago. He did so again today. In a statement, he said, "I hope that this solution puts their minds at rest and closes this sorry chapter for them." He signed it, Sir Philip Green. It's not yet clear he's done enough to save his knighthood. Joel Hills, ITV News.
Mainstay of the economy in Bridgend in South Wales, the Ford engine factory is bracing itself tonight for big job losses. ITV News has learned that 1,100 will be going there over the next 4 years. That's most of them, to be honest. Only 600 will be left. ITV Wales correspondent Rob Osborne is in Bridgend tonight. Rob, this is a breaking story, obviously, very distressing news. What more can you tell us?
Huge news for the workers here, Tom, at the Bridgend site, a lot of whom have been leaving in the last half hour as the shift pattern ends. We understand that these plans have been drawn up by Ford over the next 4 years to axe over 1,000 jobs. Ford are not confirming or denying this tonight, but we understand that they say they're responding to global demand and problems specifically with efficiency at this plant. That will not go down well with the workers here. But will it come down as a massive surprise? I'm not so sure, because many have felt they haven't got the reassurances they've wanted from Ford for some time now. As for the wider economy of South Wales, this is another major blow. We are some 20 minutes away from the Tata Steelworks in Port Talbot, which suffered major job losses there last year. As for politics, this is the area of Carwyn Jones, the First Minister of Wales, who's currently in America talking to US firms about investing here. And the timing? Well, tomorrow is St. David's Day. There won't be many celebrations going on here.
OK, Rob, indeed. Thank you very much for now. A man who laid in wait for his ex-girlfriend and her new boyfriend outside the Matalan store where the two worked has been jailed for 23 years for stabbing them to death. Andrew Saunders had researched on the internet how to kill someone after Zoe Morgan left him for Lee Simmons. Saunders ambushed them as they arrived for work at the store last September. Their family said they were bitterly disappointed with the length of the sentence. Now to a political bust-up that could perhaps fairly be described as only in UKIP. The party, in the shape of its former leader Nigel Farage and its main backer Aaron Banks, is at war with its only MP. Douglas Carswell is in trouble with them for not, apparently, trying hard enough to get Mr Farage a knighthood. So is the party ungovernable without Mr Farage in charge?
He's not the leader of UKIP anymore, but frankly, you wouldn't know it. At a Brexit event today, all anyone wanted to talk to Nigel Farage about was his latest attack on the party's only MP. Mr Farage wants Douglas Carswell out after reports he mocked his chances of getting a knighthood.
We've got a new leader of UKIP who needs to be given a chance, and if he's got somebody sitting for UKIP in the House of Commons contradicting in policy terms everything he does, that's the wrong place for us to be.
In truth, isn't this really just about you being grumpy about not being given a knighthood?
No, quite frankly, I thought we should have got rid of him back in 2015. We didn't.
Mr Carswell defected from the Conservatives to UKIP in 2014. It's no secret he and Mr Farage don't get on. But since UKIP failed to win the Stoke by-election, divisions have opened up within the party. Nigel Farage has an ally in UKIP's biggest donor, Aaron Banks, who says he'll stand against Mr Carswell at the next election. But now new leader Paul Nuttall is also being rounded on. Mr Banks has written to him saying, "I wouldn't want to list the deficiencies in the party organisation as it would take too long. I've offered to take over as chairman of UKIP in order to transform it into an efficient, professional and ultimately electable party." One friend of Mr Carswell says the leader shouldn't be cowed.
You can't sort of give in to ultimatums to appoint a particular individual as chairman or to purge a list of people, including our MP. I mean, Paul has to set out his own way of leading the party.
Paul Nuttall, though, did demand Mr Carswell meet with the party's chairman. It went well, I'm told, and the MP isn't going anywhere just yet. The point is the party should be riding high after the referendum result and not descending into civil war. Some former Conservative colleagues urged Mr Carswell to come back.
They've achieved what they set up to do, so there doesn't seem to be any point for them further going forward. I would encourage all UKIP supporters to come and back to the Conservative Party or join the Conservative Party if they weren't members to help us implement Brexit. So I guess at the moment there isn't a purpose really for them going forward, and that's maybe why they're arguing amongst themselves.
Paul Nuttall promises to unite UKIP. When he returns from holiday, it may be a bigger challenge than he expected. Emily Morgan, ITV News in Westminster.
And the fallout from the Brexit vote loomed large again this evening in a speech by Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. She said there is a faction of the government that is using Brexit to claw back power from the devolved Scottish Parliament. That, she said, was anti-democratic, and Scotland's views on leaving the EU are being ignored. Our Scotland correspondent, Peter Smith, joins us from Edinburgh now. Peter, we've had a lot of talk about the possibility of another referendum. I kind of feel it's sort of creeping ever forward. Is it a question of when, not if, really now?
Absolutely, Tom. It is. That might be a shock to some people, but the constitutional question has never really gone away in Scotland, and Brexit is breathing life into the campaign for Scottish independence. In some ways, also, the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, is boxed in. She set out her stall on June 24th and said Scotland can't be taken out of the EU against its will. We have to find some way to keep Scotland in the single market. Theresa May hasn't compromised on any of those areas, and now it seems that she is edging ever closer to the inevitable call for another independence referendum.
It would offer Scotland a proper choice on whether or not to be part of a post-Brexit UK, a UK that is undoubtedly on a fundamentally different path today than that envisaged in 2014.
Now, of course, the First Minister cannot unilaterally just go for another independence referendum. She has to seek permission from Westminster, but even the Scottish Government doesn't think that the Conservative government in Westminster would be so foolhardy as to try and block that. And now it looks like Theresa May has to be aware of the fact that not only does she have a fight with Brussels on her hands in those Brexit negotiations, she also has to keep one eye on Edinburgh, because she might just be having to keep the UK together while she takes it out of the EU.
Well, Peter, these certainly are interesting times. Thank you very much indeed. When so much of what children learn about sex and relationships is learned accidentally or deliberately on the internet, you might argue it's a good idea to redress the balance with some proper lessons in school. That, anyway, appears to be the logic behind a government plan, which ITV News learned about today. But not every parent will, of course, necessarily agree with that. Lessons will start at 4 years old, and all children and every single school in England will have to take part, whether parents like it or not.
How many young people had taken a semi-naked or naked picture of themselves?
These teenagers in London are being taught the lessons too many children learn online. Guidance about sex and relationships in an age when everything's already out there.
Sometimes maybe when you take pictures, there's obviously, especially if it's on social media, you don't exactly know who's going to see it all the time.
Do people know this word?
ITV News understands that soon this education will be open to all, with the government making sex and relationship lessons compulsory in every type of school from the age of 4.
It's extremely positive because it just opens your eyes and allows us to understand the risks and the positives as well.
Everyone worries, but they don't say it because they're kind of embarrassed, whereas if everyone was aware, then it would be a lot easier.
It's taken a long time to open up the classroom. Back in the 50s, sex was rarely mentioned in school. By the 90s, learning about it was compulsory, but only in schools run by councils, with English academies, private and free schools still able to take their own approach. Even in secondaries where sex education is compulsory, the only bit teachers have to cover is the biology. There is guidance for schools who want to go further than that, but it hasn't been updated since the year 2000, way before pupils could just step outside the classroom and get a very different education on the internet. And it is evolving technology which is evolving government policy, with Downing Street admitting today new threats online require new teaching after a long campaign by MPs.
What we hear from parents and from children in research is that they are crying out for help on this because many parents themselves feel that they're out of their depth.
School lessons would be tailored to a child's age, with sex taught later. But outside this primary, we found parents concerned.
4-year-olds shouldn't really know about relationships and so, I mean, let them just be innocent.
Obviously, if they ask the questions, obviously, as a parent, you have to answer it, but I wouldn't say 4 years old, that's way too young.
But schools in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are also under pressure to go further, with more details in England promised soon to reassure those who worry this is already too much information. Paul Brandt, ITV News.
It is often said that English football's Premier League is the richest in the world, but with big wages now on offer in China, it's proving very tempting to some top stars. Today, the transfer window there closed until the summer, and Chinese clubs have spent more than teams in England, £325 million in all, including poaching several players from top European clubs. And big names like Arsene Wenger and Wayne Rooney are now being tipped to follow in some other famous footsteps. Our correspondent in Beijing, Debbie Edward, takes a look at the rise of Chinese football.
At just 25 years old, the Brazilian midfielder Oscar not only broke the Asian transfer record, his £60 million move from Chelsea to Shanghai showed even players in their prime are being lured by the financial rewards on offer in the East. Carlos Tevez is now the highest paid player in the world, having moved from Boca Juniors for a reported $71 million. Today was John Obi Mikel's first training session at his new club, Tianjin Taida. He was no longer getting a game at Chelsea, so the offer to earn £140,000 a week was too good to turn down.
This Chinese league will only grow and grow, and it's only going to get better. And I think altogether, we, the Chinese national team, the Chinese players, everyone will benefit from this. And I think it's going to become something special soon.
The eye-watering sums being spent on foreign players are being matched pound for pound on youth football.
The government has ordered every school in China to introduce football into their curriculum, setting the target of getting 30 million students playing the game within the next 2 years. The aim is success through mass participation.
China's population is huge, so the more children we get playing, the better footballers we will have.
But until these future stars are ready, the spending spree in Europe looks set to continue.
2 years ago, it would have been unthinkable. Now the fact that Ronaldo's agent is having to deny stories about him being offered huge sums, the fact that Rooney's agent is actually travelling to China to see if these offers are real at all, shows you that a move, if not probable at this stage, is definitely possible.
Football has always been big business, but in China, it just got bigger. And a new TV rights deal will ensure the world can watch the rise of this lucrative league. Debbie Edward, ITV News, Beijing.
Now, you may know this, but tomorrow is the first day of meteorological spring, the 1st of March, but you don't necessarily need the calendar to tell you that. These magnolia trees in the Lost Gardens of Halligan in Cornwall are the traditional signal that spring has arrived in the West Country, and they were in full bloom today, a day ahead of schedule. on a slightly blustery day, as you can probably see near St Austell. Winter is almost over, thank the Lord. Let's just take a quick look at tomorrow and what might be featuring. There could be a big rebellion in the House of Lords over Brexit. Peers will be debating the status of EU nationals. And President Trump will make his first speech to the two houses of Congress. The White House says it will be about renewing the American spirit. Indeed. Raggy will be here for all that and much more. I'll be back on Thursday. For now, good night and thank you very much for watching.